So, YT Latin 2 students, welcome back. Thanks for coming in today to go over your homework from yesterday, which was the English to Latin sentences for chapter 36. We are in the home stretch here. This is our final week, and we are going to be taking our quiz on Friday. So, I want to make sure you guys understand this. Make sure you've done exercise C before you watch my explanations now, and then go over your sentences versus my sentences, see where you might have made little mistakes, and that'll let you know what you still need to work on for Friday's quiz. If you still have problems after looking at this and you go over my video, you can always pop in and see me in my office hours and I can answer more specific questions you might have. But I'll try to be thorough, but I could miss something, so make sure to pop in if you need any help at all, okay? So we'll start with number one. Some of these sentences were tough. Some of these were kind of meaty sentences, so I'm going to go through them with you and you can see what you did. Don't worry if you miss some things, that's going to happen. Number one is you will never be able to see my friends if you do not run as quickly as possible. So we're going to see comparative adverbs in these. We're going to see some of our temporal and causal clauses we've been talking about. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of different things in this chapter. So here's what I put for this one. You will never be able to see my friends nunquam poteris videa meos amicos. So you will be able is the future tense here, and it takes a complementary infinitive with data, and then my friends is the direct object. The next part of the sentence is the if part. If you do not, that's the conditional part, right? Notice how it says if you do not run. If not, you actually don't use non for that. You use this special word nisi. Instead of non si, you say nisi. So if not, you do not run. This is present tense, curris, and then as quickly as possible. It came up several times in this assignment. When you see as blank as possible for something, you're going to use quam with a superlative after it. And make sure you use a superlative adverb because look at quickly. Quickly is an adverb, of course. So quam celerime. Notice how I use a superlative adverb following quam to mean as quickly as possible. Okay, so hopefully that first one kind of explains a few things. Number two, she had not yet seen a more friendly woman than Julia's mother. So she had not yet seen. What tense should you have used here? Had seen is the pluperfect. So I put we did not is pluperfect. And then not yet is a new word from this chapter, non dum. So we did not non dum. The woman is the direct object, so feminom, accusative, and a more friendly woman needs to be a comparative, more friendly. So amiciorum. It's very important that I made this word accusative because it's modifying the direct object. Okay, a more friendly woman than Julia's mother, quam matrem Juliae. So after quam, meaning than, you're going to need to have the accusative because it's being compared to the direct object. It goes in the same case as the thing it's being compared to. What's another way you could have done this? I chose to use quam. You might remember from a few chapters ago, you could also use the ablative of comparison, which would not use the word quam, but it would just go to amiciorum matre Juliae. This word would be ablative. It's an either or type thing. Those two constructions are interchangeable. I use quam here, but you could have used ablative comparison. And the Juliae is genitive because it's showing possession, Julia's mother. Okay, so each of these sentences had quite a lot to them. Quite a few of these sentences had multiple clauses, probably because we were learning about some specific types of dependent clauses like causal clauses and temporal clauses, but there were a lot of those in these sentences. Number three, after you finished your work, what did you do next? So this is a temporal clause, after, so you have to start it with postquam. You can't use post, you actually need a conjunction here to start this clause, so that's why it's postquam. After you finished your work, the verb to finish is conficio, so conficisti, you finished, and then your work, tuum laborem, is the accusative. The question here is, what did you do next? So quid is what? Is the interrogative pronoun. Dinde, next, and what did you do is the perfect tense, fecisti. Okay. The reason I didn't use proxima here, if you remember that word proximus from the last chapter, also means next, but that's an adjective. That would be like the next day or the next person or something. This is just say, what did you do next? It's modifying the word next, so you actually need the adverb here, meaning, sorry, it's modifying the word do. What did you do? So we need the adverb to modify the verb. So that's why the end makes more sense here. Okay. So there we go. Number three, we got it all down. Number four, the animals on the top of the mountain immediately ran toward the river as soon as they saw the fires. So this one we have animalia in sumo monte, the animals on the top of the mountain. Notice how this is all ablative of place where. Ran, kukurerunt, perfect tense, toward the river ad flumen. Notice how this is accusative. Flumen's a neuter word, so the accusative of it is flumen. You should remember that. And then the last part is a temporal clause. As soon as they saw the fires. As soon as is a new phrase we learned this chapter. Simul atque. As soon as viderunt ignes. As soon as they saw the fires. So this is the main clause, the main part of the sentence, and this is the temporal part of the sentence. The temporal clause. As soon as. So that's why a dependent clause has its own verb. This is the verb of the temporal clause of the dependent clause. Okay, so a lot there. Number 4. 5. As there was danger of war, Caesar led the troops very quickly from Italy into Gaul. This was actually a causal clause because the first part of the sentence kind of causes Caesar to go from Italy to Gaul quickly. So, as is the word ut, which comes up this chapter. Ut periculum belli erat, as there was danger of war. That's the causal clause. And then here's the main clause. Caesar, he led, duxit, his forces, copias. Now notice how it's very quickly, superlative adverb celerime, and then finally from Italy into Gaul, ab Italia in Gallium, with the accusative there. Of course, remember that sometimes there's synonyms of a few of these words. You might have a little different, like for example, ab means from. You could have also used ex to mean from. So there's sometimes things like that where you have a little options. So that's why you can make notes and ask me later if you're not sure if your translation might have been correct also. So that's how we did number 5 with the causal clause. Number 6, they broke camp at daybreak and marched many miles through the territory of the Romans. So this is our idiom to break camp. They broke camp, perfect tense. So moverunt castra, they broke camp at daybreak. Prima luce, this is the ablative of time when. It's one of our new kind of idioms and constructions. And what did they do next? They marched. Remember, to march is an idiom also. Facio with the word iter. Literally to make a journey, but to march. So fecerunt iter, many miles, multa milia passuum. That's the idiom we learned a few chapters ago. And finally, through the territory of the Romans, per Romanorum fines. This is genitive because it's the territory of the Romans. Fines is accusative because it's going with per. Per takes the accusative. Is there another word you could have used for territory? Agir also meant territory, so you could have said per Romanorum agrum if you had wanted to, but I thought fines worked here as well. Okay, looks good. Number 7, on the next night we remained in the city and watched the games. For this one, I started with an ablative of time when on the next night. Proxima nocte, remember nocte is feminine, so proxima nocte. We remained mansimus in the city, and urbe is also is ablative of place where. And then finally, we watched the game, so that's perfect tense. Spectavimus ludos is accusative because it's the direct object. So this one probably a little one of the more straightforward sentences of this particular assignment. Still a couple important things here. Number 8, the Germans were much larger than the Gauls, but the Gauls fought more bravely. Several comparatives here. The Germans, Germani, were erant. Now this part's really important. Much larger, not just larger, but much larger. That's a new construction called the ablative of degree of difference, right? So for that one, you have to make sure that you use molto to mean much larger, literally larger by much. It's an ablative degree of difference. So larger is maiores. That's from last chapter. Remember how large was magnus and the comparative was maior. So that's an irregular comparative. So Germani erant multo maiores Gallis. What did I do here with Gallis? Larger than the Gauls. Well, I used the ablative comparison that I was talking about a few minutes ago. You could have also said maiores quam Galli. That also works here if you did that. Okay. And then finally, but the latter fought more bravely. Now, what does the latter mean in this context? I don't know if you use that word much, but the latter means the later of the two things you're just talking about. If you're talking about two things, it means like the second one. So here it refers to the Gauls. So in Latin, hic haec hoc means the latter, and the former, the first of two things, would be ille. So here for the Gauls, I use said he, the latter, fought pugnaverunt, more bravely. And looking at this word, I see a typo I'm going to tell you about so you can correct your paper. But more bravely is a comparative adverb. Now, what do comparative adverbs look like? They look just like the neuter endings of comparative adjectives. So this should be fortius for the comparative adverb. This should be a u right here. Okay, I want to point that out. I'll fix that later, but please excuse that mistake. Fortius. Said he fortius pugnaverunt. All right, so that's a lot there. Number 8. Number 9, a few days later, the right wing of our army easily forced the enemy to leave the camp. A few days later is actually also degree of difference because it tells you like how much later. Could be much later, could be a little later. Here it's a few days later. So these are ablative, paukis and diebus. later by a few days. Paucis post diebus. The right wing is nominative, cornu dextrum. Remember, this word is neuter, that's where dextrum. And then of our army is genitive, nostri exercitus, fourth declension, by the way. What did they do? They forced, so perfect tense, coegerunt, the enemy, hostes, to leave the camp. It's an objective infinitive, relinquere castra. Okay, you want to make sure you use the word relinquere here to leave. The word discedo, you might have used discedere, but that just means to leave. That's an intransitive verb, so it can't take a direct object. So here you'd want to use relinquere, would be a little bit better. Okay, so actually quite a lot there on number 9. Great review on some of these sentences, like fourth declension nouns here, several fourth declension nouns, and objective infinitive, all sorts of stuff for us to review. And the last one, our commander ought to wage war as fiercely as possible. I came up with noster imperator debet bellum gerere quam accerime. So our commander ought, debet is present, to wage gerere bellum. Remember, to wage war is an idiom, gerere bellum. That's a complementary infinitive, by the way, ought to wage. And then finally, as fiercely as possible would be quam with a superlative adverb. So quam accerime. You might have also said quam ferissime if you wanted to, but it doesn't need to be quam with a superlative. Okay. So this is one of those chapters with a lot of kind of little bits in them to get down. We have the quam thing. We have the comparative adverbs over here. We have temporal clauses over here. Lots of little things to nail. So you want to make sure you don't let anything fall through the cracks as you prepare for Friday's quiz. Remember, it's a big quiz. I'd love you guys to do well in it because it is our last Latin quiz of the year. I know you'd be sad to not have them for a while, but I look forward to seeing a lot of you guys in Latin 3 next year. And the next couple of days, we'll do some practice and review. Make sure to pop into my office hours if you have questions about this assignment or anything else. I'm there every day at 10 through the end of this week, and I can help you with anything you need, okay? I'll be back tomorrow with some review and some practice, and then we'll take the actual quiz on Friday, okay? Hope you guys are doing awesome, and I'll talk to you soon. Walete.